Yes.
Look at that. Look. I know electricity, I'll take care of it. To the network.
You really? Our just breeder. Is it Google?
Need to be on microphone.
We were right. She doesn't maybe to but she's got more but she's judge. She does. And where are she pregnant? Is anybody pregnant? Who's pregnant? Finally pregnant. Rose is due by October 14th. She has 7 healthy puppies. So December 3rd. Oh my goodness. So Chris like that. Oh, that's the perfect age for that. Because oh my good. Oh, oh my gosh. I'm gonna remind you of that though, because if you forget the puppy part. Like my dear friend Christine used to get with my daughter, she had 2, 1 3 and 1 1. And she got not one, but she was one less. So she was very far all crazy and like, yes, but the kids are old enough. Oh my gosh.
We have a big meeting next week. Now I propose.
Totally, he's totally gonna have.
So.
It's so. We're ready, whatever. Just looking at puppy pictures.
Okay. Well, do you want to start it or do you want us?
Yes. Wow, that echoes in here.
Wow.
It does.
Wow.
That does.
Heyo.
Welcome, all of you. We're gonna go ahead and get started with the work session. And first up, we have reimagining state parks. So help us reimagine.
Great.
Take
Well,
us to the future.
thank you.
Oh, we
very-
did do that.
Thank you very much. So today we just want to share a little bit about an exciting project. Those of you who were with us during the legislative session may remember we had legislation that would have directed us to do a study or a work group. Those didn't pass, but this is the outcome from that and gives us a little bit more adaptability to tailor it to the solutions that we have as an agency. So we're going to give you a little bit more about the background and context for the reason why we're doing the Reimagine project. Caleb Dixon, who is our market research analyst, is going to share about a survey that we just wrapped up, and he'll give you some preliminary results. And then Joe Niehaus, who's our senior policy analyst and the coordinator manager of our Reimagine
I do.
project.
She's my
Project lead. She's the chief cat herder of the Reimagine project, is going to share more about the project and some of the components that we have underway currently. And then we'll have time for a discussion. Feel free to ask questions as we go through, but we'll also have some time for additional questions at the end. And I know that there are a number of staff in the room who have thoughts on this, so feel free to add. It's a definite group project. So just background, why we need to reimagine. It really is rooted in the unsustainability of our financial situation, that our costs are exceeding our ability to fund them. If we talked with legislators a lot about our budget situation and our budget challenges, and they were sympathetic. We also know the legislature is not going to solve our budget challenges, so it's up to us to figure out what the solutions are. The increasing costs, including utilities, inflation, staffing, all of the things, combined with the fact that our lottery funding has declined, leads us to looking at a 14% budget shortfall by 2027 if we did nothing. So that's the basic background. If we don't do anything, we don't have enough money to operate the way that we are. So we're looking at how we can reimagine parks so that doesn't happen. And it's important to look at how did we get here? It wasn't one thing. There's not one contributing factor. It's a whole series of things. The rigid expenditure authority and the financial constraints are a piece of it. The inflexibility, that was one of the things that we talked a lot about during the legislative session with Senate Bill 838 that will give us some flexibility there. Our difficulty in generating revenue. Lottery funds are approximately half of our budget. So as lottery funds decline, that creates some difficulty, and we don't have a sustainable revenue generation model. We have aging infrastructure. Many of our buildings are 50 to 100 years old, and we don't have the funding for maintenance or operations of those historic facilities. Today, you saw many of the historic facilities at Fort Stevens, and as Justin Parker was saying, you can't go to Home Depot to get things to repair the battery. It's not unique to Fort Stevens, it's everywhere. Silver Falls has 75 historic roofs. So the maintenance and operation of some of our infrastructure is a huge challenge. We still have impacts from the pandemic, having the closures during COVID-19, the loss of, as bars and restaurants were closed, the loss of lottery funding. We had a $20 million budget hole then and laid off 370 full-time staff or seasonal staff and 43 full-time staff. So that's still an impact. And then inflation and rising costs. The $50 million in GO bond projects that we had, that we weren't even sure we could spend all of that money, ended up being 8 projects, and they're coming in at over $90 million to just do those 8 projects. And then there's just the general structural challenges of being an executive branch agency that operates 24/7 across the state in rural areas, unlike any other state agency. So we continue to struggle with what does it look like to be the type of agency that operates parks. So the real challenges, and they're structural, they're not just tweaking. We have made changes, and we're going to talk about some of those changes today, and then some of the changes tomorrow as well, and some of the proposals that we have for you to vote on tomorrow will help continue to do that. But we're reimagining because we can't just continue to tweak at the edges. We need to really look more wholesale. So I'm going to turn it over to Caleb to share results of a survey.
I guess I would add in there, Katie's being polite, not saying it, but the COLAs, the last legislative session, somebody helped me with the total number, but it was close to 15%. So right about 15% for all staff. And then we're now back into 3.4 and 3 point something. So we're nearly 7%. And so if you extrapolate that across the entire organization, not saying that everybody doesn't deserve pay raises, but it is a significant amount of our budget. That in addition to these other things. And the other thing that happened was the ballot measure had assumed once we hit a certain threshold in lottery, once we went over a percentage from 2009, that we would redistribute, you're welcome, Stu, our lottery funds to local government. So 13% of that has gone, and it's a significant amount of money coming out of our operational budget. So, so there's those things, but the big things are probably those 2 real big factors.
All right, so as part of the Reimagine State Parks campaign, We wanted to hear from the public and from park users in particular to kind of understand a number of different factors. So we sent out a survey, and it was an online survey. And to get as many responses as we could, because we want to hear from as many voices as possible, we distributed the survey through social media, through press releases. It was mentioned in media interviews. There were visitor emails, emails to partners to spread the word, and then flyers put up in libraries and parks. And we had the survey open from July 23rd to September 9th. So as Katie said, we just closed it last week. These are preliminary results. We're going to be digging into it more over the next few weeks. But all this outreach did pay off in terms of responses. We had roughly 5,000 responses, which is a great response rate, and gives us a lot of more confidence in those results. Now, in terms of what we were looking to learn in the survey is we wanted to gauge the public's opinion, kind of on the one hand about funding. So in a general sense, how should state parks be funded, big picture, but then also some specific questions about public-private partnerships and sponsorships, some of the more maybe innovative or modern approaches to funding parks. And then on the other hand, we also wanted to understand kind of what are people looking for from a demand for experiences, amenities, facilities. And part of that is also understanding what do they currently like about Oregon State Parks, because we don't want to change things that are bringing all of these visitors in right now. And then asking about what new services or amenities folks would like to see. So it's helpful to understand who responded to the survey. And in general, a lot of the respondents are state park visitors. In the last year, 93% made at least one day visit to one of our parks, and 71% camped at least once. Now, their favorite activities, hiking and walking, camping, sightseeing. This is typically what we see when we have a big widespread survey, these activities. And in terms of the most important benefits that they receive from visiting parks, we have enjoying scenic beauty in nature, experiencing calm, peace, and relaxation, and then spending time with family and friends. So this is kind of what they're telling us they get benefits from these spaces, or this is how they benefit from these spaces. Now, jumping into the funding questions, we asked about support for or opposition to parks being funded by some kind of big picture public funding sources. And the most supported options across all the respondents were: 1, a ballot measure to increase existing lottery funding for parks; 2, an option to purchase an Oregon State Park parking permit during vehicle registration; and then 3, the development of a new public endowment fund for state parks maintenance. Now, there were other options on this list that they were able to score. And I do want to point out that nothing was overwhelmingly opposed. So, we have scores from, 1 to 5, and we're seeing everything in the 3s, 4s, or nothing was a perfect 5, but there was generally support for these various funding options. Now, we talked a little bit a minute ago about partnerships, and we broke down partnerships into 2 different groups for this survey. The first was really revenue-focused partnerships and sponsorships that aren't really happening at the park level. And so we asked, support or opposition for a variety of these. The most supported was Oregon-based companies donating percentage of sales, things like special events. You can think like a weekend sale, and proceeds, from this sale go towards Oregon State Parks. The second was basically private companies sponsoring programming at events at parks, infrastructure upgrades, possibly even funding projects. So kind of providing the funding for programs like the Junior Ranger program, for instance, possibly children's playgrounds. Now, I'm going to talk more about this because there's a lot more nuance to how the responses were on this type of topic. But they did show support for it. And then the third most supported were brand collaborations with private companies. Now, the other type of partnerships we asked about were more directly related to experiences at parks. And so these are kind of private companies providing amenities or services that visitors would be benefiting from directly at the park. in addition to what OPRD already provides. And the most supported were equipment rentals, park maintenance, guided experiences. So you can think of like a private guide company being on park lands. But there was very strong opposition to private companies building on state park land, brick and mortar restaurants run by private companies. And that strong opposition kind of leads me to our next results, which are the themes that we get from, or that we take away from our open-ended responses. So we had about 5,000 comments, and the top theme was opposition to, in this case, it really should say over privatization or commercialization, but people are very against any sort of corporate management of parks. They don't want to see any corporate branding. So when we're talking about support for certain partnerships, they want it to be invisible. People even mentioned things about, well, I'd be okay if there was maybe a small plaque or something, right? They don't want it to be, this playground brought to you by this company, or this restaurant managed by this company. They want state parks to be managed by OPRD, despite some support for kind of limited partnerships. Some other themes, there were support for increased fees for out-of-state visitors. There's generally support for different types of, or different public funding or public financing. So general fund, lottery dollars, targeted taxes. There were some suggestions for new revenue generating services, things like food trucks, guided tours, gear rentals, events and festivals. There was support for nonprofit or local partnerships. So, volunteer partnerships, donations, mentions of like, how can we set up to collect more donations from visitors? And then there were, though, concerns about affordability, of course, with higher prices. And then some folks called for, improvements in operational efficiency, saying, lowering operations costs and things like that. But these themes are ranked for what it's worth in terms of most mentioned. So the most mentioned here are at the top. And like I said, the big one was the opposition to privatization and commercialization. So moving into the amenity service questions, like I said, we want to know, what do you currently, or what's most important currently that's offered by OPRD? And then also looking to the future, where should our priorities be? And interestingly enough, the most important both now and in the future are the core facilities and amenities. So things like restrooms, trash cans, parking, things related to safety and cleanliness. And then there's also, just in terms of future priorities and current priorities, the general conservation of natural and historic resources was very important to these respondents. And what was least important were comfort enhancements. So things like electric vehicle charging, Wi-Fi, showers, kind of things that maybe go into the more modern comforts you might see at campgrounds and outdoor areas. Now, looking at new activities, so we had a long list of new activities asking about your folks' interest in participating. The greatest interest was in undeveloped or primitive camping opportunities, followed by guided tours, and then concerts and community events. Now, I do want to point out that, so we have these scores from 1 to 5. We didn't really see extremely strong interest in any one option. So even though these are ranked as with the greatest interest, they're typically seeing scores in the 3 to maybe 3.3, if we get into decimals, out of 5. We didn't see any one option that we saw overwhelming interest in. On the other end of the spectrum, the least interest was shown for large commercial lodges, ATV and e-bike trails, rentals, and guides, and then zip lining, rope courses, and bungee jumping. So some of the, kind of to summarize what the initial takeaways are, the first thing is that there's a lot of support for OPRD having stable funding, because frankly, people really like the current state of parks. They like what's offered, they like their experiences. And so they've shown support for various public financing sources, then, like I said, limited sponsorships and partnerships, and new revenue generating practices. But again, when we talk about those partnerships, people do not want things to be privatized or overly commercialized, and they prefer what is maybe invisible at the park level. And so in a general sense, respondents place a high value on the preservation of natural and historic resources. They're telling us that they want safe, clean, easy to access parks where they can experience nature with family and friends. So and the nature, I think, is a theme that comes out here, is that the natural look and feel of the parks is something that people express is very important to them. And so they want the infrastructure that supports those experiences with some level of comfort, right? It's nice to go to outdoor areas where you can hit a parking spot, you're going to be safe, there's drinking water, restrooms, but they don't want too much. They don't want too much of modern life, things like Wi-Fi and other comforts, kind of being part of that experience. So overall, I think we're getting a good feel for what people want from parks, but we're going to continue to dig into this data and try to learn as much as we can from it. I think I'll hand it off here to Joe.
Before you do, any questions on the survey?
Do you have a general sense of the age group for respondents?
The ages range, we really had respondents, so we did ask for their age groups in about 10-year increments. I believe that I have it actually in here.
Be interested.
That the,
Right, like did we?
if you don't mind me skipping through here real quickly. I can,
No, close your eyes.
If you hit escape, you can get out of
okay.
it.
Yeah, don't take away all the fun. You guys are gonna be wowed by that part.
I'll tell you. So the median age, so the middle group was the 50 to 59, but then the actual most common were 60 to 69 at 24%, and then about 22% were 40 to 49. So we had a lot of people grouped really from 40 up to 69 years old, but we did have people from all age groups. And if you're curious, the median income was 100 to 120 for household income, which is a little bit higher than the Oregon median. I think the Oregon median, it's about 80K. I actually saw the other day, it might be 86K. So that's the median. We did have representation from across the income spectrum. So if we wanted to, we can look at, lower income responses. We can look at responses by age as well. And that's a benefit of having 5,000 responses, is we have a pretty good sample from all these different subgroups as well.
Do you have a sense of the geographic distribution of the respondents?
So we just ran the numbers a few days ago. So the survey is not representative of the state, because it's a voluntary survey. But looking at the state of Oregon, so the majority of respondents are from Oregon, of course. And I believe we have pretty good, from looking at the county populations compared to the county representation in the survey. It looked like it's pretty good. It's not perfect. Some counties are a little overrepresented. Some might be a little underrepresented, but we do have responses from across the state, which is good to see.
Two questions. One is, you gave us some of the top revenue ideas that came up. I mean, do you have a more inclusive list of like the ideas that were shared with you? I mean, does it include things like license plate fees and such, or?
Yes, we're this is kind of still the process of going through all of the comments and summarizing it. But that's part of what we're going to be doing as we put together kind of a final analysis.
And just a suggestion, so in just the high view of the demographics and the respondents that you showed, two things jumped out. I mean, one is a very high percentage of them are overnight park users, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also it sounds like the demographics use a little bit middle age to higher. If your sample is large enough, it might be worth doing a little bit of a scrub to look at what I would 45 and younger, only because in the next 20 years, these are the park users are going to be the long-term payers of things. So understanding their attitude may give us an idea of how things might change in 20 years as attitude towards the park.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So write that down.
Any other questions before we move on?
Great, I'll switch spots.
Any of you do the survey?
No.
Where was it?
It's been everywhere. Social media.
And come across.
Oh,
Thank you.
thanks, Daniel.
You might bring.
No.
like,
Are you not on social media?
Yep.
Do you follow us?
We did email to campers a survey link too, so we got, toward the end, we got quite a few campers that had filled it out.
Great. Thanks, Caleb. I was hoping you were going to talk a little bit more about the survey, but we'll move on to the reimagining part. Our awesome communications division graphics folks created this for us to help encapsulate the whole idea of this reimagine campaign in one go. And it's really well done. It articulates the problem, which simply put, that it is very expensive to operate our park system the way it is, and the way we're going, we are outpacing our revenue. So the solution is to look for a proactive strategic initiative to financially sustain our park system. It seems very fancy, but really it drills down to these three main strategies. And all of our projects moving forward are aligned with at least one of these three strategies moving forward: improving internal efficiencies, aligning amenities with pricing, and expanding creative partnerships. So you'll see some of the projects outlined here in this graphic, but I'll go into a little bit more detail about what we have been doing in the last 6 months and how things have been aligning and what we hope to achieve into the near future. So our first strategy is to improve internal efficiencies. As with any kind of budget or revenue or money issue, we looked internally first. What are we doing? What are we spending on? And how do we get a control of what we're doing? And where do we want to be doing things differently? So we started this thing called the Financial Foundations Initiative. And that's really an agency-wide effort to strengthen our decision-making culture around money. We're shifting to help us make consistent, intentional, strategic, and sustainable choices with not just the dollars, but also with our time and labor. This helps us with by decision tools at every level. So we're not just looking at it as a huge load for just our finance unit to carry on their own, but looking at it from each individual unit to park management, and then to all of the different departments from the ground up. This also involves looking at our assets, the things that we have to maintain and take care of. There'll be a full facilities assessment to figure out where the conditions are, what we need to do, and if we have assets that we can let go of or where we need to prioritize. We're looking at our budgets differently too. You know, a lot of government agencies are used to receiving a budget and then making strategies around that budget. What does it look like if we flip that around? If we look at strategies to build up our budget, and then we're able to make improvements with more future thinking strategies. And all of that really helps with the new procurement exemption. This rulemaking adoption will come in front of you tomorrow, but we have been looking at ways that we can be more flexible around how we operate, where we contract, and where we can save money in these procurements. Because as a 24/7 hospitality service, we operate very differently from other government agencies like employment or revenue, and we have to be available, and we have to have our contractors available around the clock. Our second strategy is to align amenities with pricing. This includes things that unfortunately does also come to be a burden for our visitors in the form of fee increases. but we have been very conservative in fee increases in the past, so much so that it does surprise people when we do them now. We haven't raised fees for day use parking permits since 2009, back when Taylor Swift was dating John Mayer. And other things happened in 2009 too. But if we're looking at how prices have increased for everybody with inflation and just the way our economy has evolved, we are looking at really stagnant fee increases so that we have to now increase them to keep up. And it does come across as more of a surprise to people who have not seen us make these or take this type of action. We're also realizing that we have a lot of demand, and with our demand, people expect you must be getting more money. And in one sense, that may be true, but it is a big burden for our facilities when it gets that kind of attention. And the maintenance just continues to go up, and there's a lot more demand for people to be able to access things. So where can we creatively look at what we want the future to hold for our visitors? What are they asking for? And what will help us maintain a steady revenue stream? That includes building more cabins and yurts. And we hope to get some more ideas from things like the public survey that really tell us what people are thinking. I agree that we need to look at that information with more of a demographic breakdown. And we're so lucky to have Caleb. So like this survey closed a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and we already have preliminary data. So that this week. So that was really great. And we hope to get some more information and understand what the visitors are really truly expecting of us and be able to utilize that to make strategic decisions so that this is done with them and not to them. One of the things that maybe people feel like are being done to them right now are some parking fee additions. Currently, we have 25 day use parking areas around the state that charge a $10 day use parking fee. The rule, though, is that all parking or all day use parking areas have a parking fee. We just waive it at most of them. We're adding another 22 parks to that list. So I'm just going to use this parking fee project as an example because this is a very relevant ongoing project right now. Not only are we adding these 22 new parks to the current list of 26. We are looking at a new option to pay. So in the past, we've been using Ventec machines or these self-registration envelopes where people can put cash in the envelopes and then stick them in a thing called an Iron Ranger, which is basically a metal box that sticks out. And sometimes people like to vandalize. And now we're moving forward into the 21st century with QR code payments. They are in a lot of places for parking, from restaurants to all kinds of online checkouts, coffee shops, etc. So this is starting to become more and more of a familiar option to pay. And yet we recognize that this is a big change for a lot of our park users. So we have the October 1st implementation date for these 22 parks to come online. Many of them will be starting with the new QR code payment option. Some of them, it's not necessarily possible at this time because we still have a lot of places that are quite remote and we don't have the necessary Wi-Fi connection, or all of the cell service providers have enough data available to be able to implement that. So in those areas, we're still utilizing Ventec machines and SRE envelopes. We were anticipating quite a lot of pushback in the beginning because this is a brand new thing. There's been some comments and some questions from folks, but overall, we did a lot of community outreach, letting our tribes know and our partner agencies know, and did a lot of public communication late July and early August. More so than just the QR codes themselves, we wanted to make sure that we were doing our due diligence to let our communities know that this new parking fee is coming into place. Our day use parks are so loved, but they don't collect a whole lot in fees and are pretty much subsidized by our other visitors, and particularly in the form of the overnight fees. And with over 56 million people coming to our parks every year, it's really necessary to make sure that we have the money needed to make and keep our parks open and make our facilities accessible. So we're currently working on the staff training with all of this technology. There's also a lot of training for ourselves, figuring out the other visitor resources that folks might need, signage and installation, and then really the enforcement and the safety that it will require for both of our rangers and for our visitors. This is a list of the new parks that are coming on. When you toured Fort Stevens today, you probably realized around Coffinberry Lake, there are already day use fees required. There are not day use fees required at some other areas of Fort Stevens, partially because that park is so large and there are so many different parking areas to go to. With the onset of the QR code payments and with this new implementation, more of those parking lots will come online. And then down the coast, we are adding about 9 other places. And with the mountain region, they're also seeing some in the valleys. So we've tried to split the addition of new parking areas across the state. And then lastly, this really dovetails in with the survey information. We are looking at ways to have creative partnerships. We're looking at those public-private partnerships that'll help us expand the array of amenities that we can give to our visitors. And the way that we interact with these partnerships and businesses will also require us to update our concessionaire policy and looking at our special use permits and commercial use permits so that we can make sure that we are getting into these relationships in an ethical and transparent and accessible way. We're also looking at things like sponsorships, licensing and trademark agreements. These revenue sharing models and collaborations are incredibly popular. We've seen them done really successfully, especially with local park agencies and even with national parks. So there's a lot of really good examples that we can follow. I did want to go back real quick, back to the parking fees. This picture here is from Tuvell State Park. Tuvell is actually one of those 26 parks currently that do charge a day use parking fee. However, there's a Ventec machine down there that for some reason does not work, only works about less than half the time. So this proved to be a really good testing site for us where we covered the Ventec machine, and that's that big brown box with the sign plastered on top of it, and the current Iron Ranger that's there. And we utilized the QR code so that we could set it up and see how it worked there before we started implementing it live at some of the parks that had never seen parking fees before. It went live last Monday. And by the end of the day, Friday, we were able to collect some data already. So Monday through Friday, the week after Labor Day, is not the most popular time for us, but we had already 85 permits purchased via the QR code, when at the same time last year in that 5-day period, Monday through Friday after Labor Day weekend, they only collected 30. So that was a big confidence booster, and the Tuvell management unit or the Valley of Rogue management unit and the Tuvell team have been doing a fantastic job being our guinea pigs, giving us feedback and letting us know what works and what doesn't. And our IT folks have been really great at responding and trying to make adjustments so that the other parks that are coming online can do this more smoothly.
Joe, do you want to remind people the other options if they don't use the QR code?
Yes, absolutely. So then this isn't the only way you can pay. We'll take your money in all kinds of ways. People can purchase a daily parking permit starting October 1st on our website. So if people are proactive and are planners and not like me at all, then they can go ahead and do that before they get on the road, because maybe they're just like, I don't want to have to mess with that. I don't want to worry about my phone. I don't want to. And what it'll do is it'll take your license plate down. So then when our rangers go around, all they do is they use an app to scan your license plate information. It'll let us know that if that plate has been paid for or not, similar to many other parking enforcement that happens around the state.
Joe, does that all feed into one system? So the QR code, all of this stuff is into one
Yes.
database, and they just, that's interesting.
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you, Chair Hill. So if you purchase a parking permit from one park through a QR code or on the website, and you decide to go to a different park, you'll still be in the same system. So when the ranger scans your license plate, you're good for that day. If you don't, the next day, then it'll come up, and then we'll leave you a nice note that asks you to pay by the end of the day.
What about for yearly passes? Is that still a tag that you have to display and that doesn't necessarily go into the system?
Yes, currently that is still only a physical pass. We do have the capability to bring that online soon. The decisions and discussions around that still need to be had because there are a lot of benefits to having that physical hang tag where families with multiple vehicles can transfer from car to car. But if we only use it by license plate, it does remove that option. It is also convenient for people who are forgetful that then they don't have to make sure that they have that with them and then that their license plate is already included. So there's a few logistic things that we need to figure out. But that's already been something that people have been asking for. So, I think it'll just be a matter of time before that's an available option.
And you can purchase the annual permit online.
Right.
And you'll get an email that you can print and put in your license, in your windshield until your permit is mailed to you. So you can still purchase online.
I thought that sorry, can I ask a question? I thought that that hang tag, you had to put your license plate on it.
No.
Oh, okay. It may be coming.
That is an option for the future.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
The other, if you walk into a park, bike into a park, or take public transportation, there is no fee. This is only a parking fee. Or if you're camping in a state park, your camping receipt is your day use permit for that park or another park throughout the day.
Yes, there's a lot of different ways, and it does require our rangers to make sure to go through the catalog of things and different ways that people can pay for things, including, the traditional Ventec receipt, making sure that that is in the dash so that people that have that know that, even if your license plate comes up invalid, we will look to make sure that there is a physical pass. And then if there isn't, then you may get that nice note and reminder. Yes.
My mind's swirling, got a lot of, been thinking about this for a long time. So yeah, I'm a big fan of remote parking. Portland uses Parking Kitty, for instance, and it maintains, the buyers have an option, put their license plates in, so it's within the app and they can easily add on to it and things of that sort. Have you run into any problems with connectivity for people for using QR codes? I mean, do we have any parks that are actually in dark areas where it's just like, okay, we got a QR code, but we can't connect?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Perula. It's a very good one. Yes, we have. In fact, we have had to do quite a bit of lift from our IT folks and our park managers and operations managers to go around doing testing to make sure that there's enough cell service provided from each of the three main carriers. When that is not the case, we've looked at cell boosters. So we're installing a lot of cell boosters in some places, and where that's not really an option, we have looked at adding Starlink so that there's an easy Wi-Fi accessibility to quickly make the payments. Those all have a cost associated with them. Yes, they are quite a bit cheaper than still the Ventec edition. Those Ventec machines are expensive. They do tend to break down. So we are looking at other technical ways to address these issues. Even for places with things like Starlink and service providers, we are aware we will have periods of time when those services can and probably will go down. When that happens, our rangers will be able to soften the enforcement, just like they are doing when new things like this are implemented. It does require a little bit more of customer service and that initial education first approach. We really, really want to encourage people, and will be doing so through social media, to have people purchase passes before they go out, and also promoting our 12-month annual permits. They're $30 right now. If people are going into parks more than 3 times a year to park, it's a pretty good deal.
My follow-up question is, I think this gives the parks some really interesting long-term opportunities, particularly working with analysts. So on the hotel side, we really live on what we call dynamic pricing, right? It's not always a set price. And as we are now embracing an increase in parking fees, I think after a year's worth of really digesting park usage and history of parking. You know, it might give park staff the ability to say, hey, you know, we can perhaps have dynamic pricing of like, these are the hot times of the year when parking's $10. And okay, you know, park usage goes down in November and December, and it's just like, it's a $5 park or something of that sort. So it may provide a community relationship benefit to us as we have more information. My other thought is, I think you should always use the opportunity to upsell. And if you've connected someone who's at a point of purchase and you're able to say, buy an annual pass, you know, it's literally, it's an upsell like we do in the restaurant industry. So just two thoughts.
Thank you.
Those are good comments. Go ahead, Betty.
Yeah, I just have a question about enforcement. Do all of the places where you have to pay a fee, do they all have a park ranger who can check to see if people have paid? And if people have not paid, like I understand that there's like this soft rollout, but if people have not paid, what is the enforcement?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Commissioner Zumi. So for all of our areas that do have parking fees, there are enforcement duties assigned to the park rangers as they go out. The tool that they use are their cell phones. That comes with the app that the company who is running this for us also manages, so that they're able to scan the license plates fairly easily. For now, when you go into a park today, if you don't pay, you are likely going to get an advisory reminder or a compliance request. Those are softer than tickets. If you're a recognizable license plate or car where you have frequently come into the park and not paid, you may actually receive a ticket. If that happens, that citation will go through the local county, and legal processes will continue as it would in other places in the county.
And then parks will receive the,
No.
okay.
No.
Oh, I
Goes to
see.
the local jurisdiction.
Oh, okay, okay.
And in the current 26 parks, we do enforce and we do ticket.
Mm-hmm,
These ones will be a little softer as we practice together.
mm-hmm.
Any
Yes,
of our citations for anything, we don't receive revenue from any citations. It goes to whatever the local jurisdiction is that processes the tickets.
So the compliance request is actually just like, please go online and pay today when you get home or something. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks. So I had a question just about what factors were considered when you determined which parks to remove the fee waivers on, because as I'm sure Director Sumption knows, I'm about to ask 4 of those parks were in Coos County, which is roughly 20% of the parks that have had a fee waiver added on. So that's significant. And do we consider socioeconomic factors of, you know, the surrounding demographics, that sort of thing? Because I've heard quite a bit of complaining down in our area about the upcoming parking fees.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Cribbins. There were a variety of factors that went into these considerations, particularly visitation numbers, amenities. Local community was also considered along with our partner agencies. Some of our places are on lease property as well, so we did have to look at some of those lease agreements. Really, we're looking at how much use is there and how much does it cost to keep up these places.
Just out of curiosity, did you compare whether these are essentially destination? Are we looking at areas that are primarily getting out-of-state visitors? Because I do think, I mean, this will be purely my opinion and the opinion of no one else, that in Oregon, part of the problem that we have is we are not appropriately generating revenue from all of our out-of-state visitors.
We didn't look at the complete breakdown of out-of-state versus in-state necessarily. We don't have a lot of back data on that. However, we do have people, when they scan that QR code, they are selecting whether they are in-state or out-of-state residents, where out-of-state residents do pay more.
So, sorry, and this will be my very last question, I promise.
You can have more.
So is this something, do you have a plan to look back at these new parking areas in the next year or so and just compare compliance and, you know, who is visiting those parks, that sort of thing?
Yes, we have a lot of plans to look back at some of this data. It's been really helpful having Tubel come online early too. What we're really looking at is how has this implementation been going? What are the issues? What made sense? Where is it not working? What are the biggest complaints? It is likely that we'll have a whole phase 2 of additional parks coming online in the future as well.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. We're good to keep going.
Okay.
I know we're almost towards the end here. I did want to end on a little bit of a fun note. We're talking about reimagining, so we do have to go back. I'd like to give credit to our historian, Christy Sweet. She gave this pop quiz to us during our headquarters all staff meeting just a couple weeks ago, and I just stole it from her. And it was so interesting and great. I hope you didn't peek at those answers earlier. So it's a little true or false. We have been trying to look for creative ways to generate revenue over the years. This is not new, but some of these ideas are interesting. So, did OPRD open a store selling Beanie Babies at Detroit Lake?
Well, I hope.
It's true.
Well,
Not only did we do that, it was in the 90s and we made about $100,000, which is a lot of money.
when everybody was
Did you
freaking
have the
out.
Princess Diana one?
Oh,
What-
Dennis, do you
more
have
money.
that? But it was very nice to go back and trying to raise money.
That's awesome.
The boo-boos. There's the next one, right? Wow.
I think now they would be La Boo Boos.
Yeah. that's
I'm not
I said.
sure what they are, but I've been told. Okay, true or false? We hosted the US Junior Ski Jump Olympic Trials at Pilot Butte. It's true. It is true. Will this work? This was in 1965. It was unseasonably warm. There's no sound associated with this video, but here's Pilot Butte. There's not a lot of
We do
snow.
anything for money.
Yes,
Wow.
Did you bring in the snow?
athlete. Definitely brought in the hay.
Did you make money?
Did we make money? That's a better question. I'll have to follow up with an answer on that one. Okay,
This is
just
the
a couple
Beanie Baby
more.
program, like close the financial.
True or false? We sold grazing rights for cows at Rooster Rock to cut down on costs for mowing lawns.
False.
False.
That's false.
True. These cows are down at Goose Lake right now, but it didn't last too long. We had a lot of complaints from the nude beach. True or false? We rented llamas and we allowed visitors to rent llamas to pack hiking gear around.
False. Right. Llamas are temperamental.
Almost-
It's true. They are temperamental. It was short-lived, but we
Alpacas.
did try. And last, true or false, we sold advertisement spots in our park brochures.
I like this.
We did. And it's funny because we sold advertisements to private campgrounds for our park brochures.
Come dump at our park.
So as you can see, the reimagining is not new. We've been reimagining. We're continuing to reimagine. We're really hopeful that this is going to come up with some ideas and strategies for us to become more financially sustainable in the future. So we don't have to hawk Beanie Babies and farm animals in the future, unless like we hit miniature cows. But other than that, you know, we're really looking for ways to help grow with a vision of what Oregonians have for us in a financial sustainable way. Any other questions or discussion?
I thought it kind of interesting. You were talking earlier about this brand collaboration. That it sounds like folks don't want like McDonald's and Wendy's and stuff in there, but they're okay with food trucks. So is it just they're big companies or what is it?
I think it's a combination of being anti-big corporations. And then I think food trucks may be seen as less permanent as well. And so, you know, it can be sort of in a parking lot and then there for a day and then gone. And so, yeah, there are some things that I think we still need to tease out with sort of what is if you think of like the spectrum of these types of partnerships and kind of where does the support, how far does the support go up to and where does it stop? Because yeah, some things like they don't want parks to be managed by private companies, but they're okay with guided experiences, right? So, or rentals, or so, there are things that, and it probably depends on the park. It probably depends on the specific context as well. So, there are, potentially some contradictions in there, but we'll be looking at it more deeply and looking even, as mentioned, kind of at some of the demographics as well to see if there's differences across,
Thank you for the clarification.
Well, and I think it's wide open for definition, right? Because even at exec team, when we were having the dialogue about what private-public partnerships, none of us had the same idea, right? Like, and I think when folks react to that, it's immediately, well, no, I don't want zip lines in Silver Falls. I want to just do the 10-fall water hike, right? Or waterfall hike. And not recognizing there's already equestrian experiences, there's already a resort experience, there's already a tree climbing or tree canopy. We're not going to distract from the experience you have, but there may be the ability to expand on experiences that 20-year-olds may want that didn't get captured in the survey. And so not diminishing what you're used to, but we do have places we could add different particular partnerships. So we got to dig into that a little bit more and probably clarify what that really means. It's not, we're not going to have McDonald's in a state park, but there probably will be food trucks. And I think in 1932, 1934, there was an ice cream truck at Humbug.
Yes.
I mean, this is not a new problem, you guys.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Betty.
Yeah, thanks for this presentation. It was really great to see what you've all been working on. I was wondering, we've talked about before merch. I still want my trucker hat, but just in terms of like, is selling merch a potential opportunity? And then also with regards to public-private partnerships, I've seen like rumpled blankets with different national parks on them, or is that are those types of partnerships being discussed?
Do you want, or,
Yeah, like a Pendleton, right? We
Yeah, I can start answering that, and then I think Katie can help finish that question. Yes, so we are looking at our different licensing and trademark agreements as well. These collaborations have happened in the past. We've done collaborations with brands like Pendleton and the Danner Boots, the Park Project, I think that they did a lot of brand collaborations with like NPS as well. So those have been done in the past. And so we can look at more of those types of collaborations that way. The merch question's a really good one because people do love us and they love wearing things that display their support for their special parks and places. The logistics of having a store, managing a store, ordering and supplying all of those things is another component to that, where the merch sales don't quite drive up the revenue in the way we would like to see. So what we've been looking at are these collaborations where other brands like Park Project can pay for their trademark and the licensing, and we get a portion of that. And that's been really successful. We do that now with a local company here called Patchmarks, and they do all kinds of patches, hats, stickers. And they have had their own versions of state park brands in the past, and now they have the real ones. And I think that that's been a really good example of something that's successful.
as we have changes in the procurement rules, it will open up our ability to do that more with multiple vendors. And then we have created park identities. So you'll see different patches with different parks. So Fort Stevens has its own identity, and we can do more merchandise with those specific parks, whether it's through Patchmarks or through a different company. And as we get the procurement flexibility, that will enhance our ability to do that. So we do have our merchandise team looking at additional options, probably more so within collaborations with parks and within park stores, because that seems to be where we have the most interest. We have an online store that will continue to have an online presence, but we aren't looking at expanding that exponentially at this point.
Go ahead, Dave.
Dave, first, sorry.
Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, sorry.
Because
I'm
I'm really impressed over the past day and also in the time I've been interacting with different park staff. It's really obvious that this is on everybody's mind, all staff members. I'm just curious, what's the organizational approach? I mean, do you have like a lead committee that's working on revenue recommendations? And like, how are you skinning the cat, like internally?
You see it right
Right
here.
there with the cat skinner, right?
So we literally exec team and leadership team, we had so many things going on at the same time. So we actually, it's all hands on deck. Like we knew we had to react quick because it was very clear that there was no help coming. And we knew that through the pandemic. I mean, we were 20 million in the hole and everything was closed and everybody loves us, but to try to rally funding is just not realistic. So, we're doing this with everybody that we already have. We've taken Jo and had her come up and start herding cats literally to get these things done because we had, I don't know, 15 different projects going at the same time. And so Jo and Tammy, who's not in the room, have been doing the primary bulk of the project management to make sure that we can actually implement the realities of the conversations. Because we would say, well, we're doing this, and all of a sudden it'd be like, where are we at with that? So it's a small but mighty team, and everything. You guys did the legwork, right? You did all the rulemaking for us to make sure we had the ability to waive in different places. You have the procurement rules coming, you do the fee ranges. So you've been doing it. You just didn't know how much it fed into the bigger vision.
The reason I ask is, the conversations, like even today, I mean, a lot of things have brought up. It's like, oh, we realize that wastewater fees and archaeological fees and things of that sort. And there's lots of, and I'm sure everyone's thinking about this, but there's lots of ideas, but then, are some of them, are the juice worth a squeeze? Like, you're chasing after a fee for X, Y, and Z. So like, sounds like, you're working towards a master plan. My other thought is, and this is just my thought because you guys are smarter than I am, it is really, I keep thinking about yield management and listening to the presentations that we've had about the value of primitive camping and the additions of primitive camping. We talked about it today, but are we dynamically pricing it, or are we statically pricing it?
Yeah.
So, is there, in the lodging industry, I mean, they have yield managers who spend their time saying, okay, this is high season and this is what the costs are. And, if you're a little bit more price sensitive, okay, lower season. So I don't know how much of that's in play and how much online booking, platforms the park system is in, but it could be a real revenue review that might make a real change.
Yeah. So there's so many things there.
There's a lot of.
So in particular, we have one reservation company that came in 1990. Somebody help me. It was exact 96. It was the year the AOL came out. And that is literally the last time that it has actually been touched and updated. So we've put pretty much the entire reservation community on notice that like they need to figure out how to do something that could be even comparable to Airbnb for the recreation industry. And that's for every one of us across the country, and including national and even our Canadian friends to the north. And so they're all like running as fast as they can to create a platform that's going to work differently. So all those things you described are really challenging. Like what didn't get mentioned is we will be doing dynamic pricing starting October 1 for the new season. But it's as dynamic as Caleb can help us create, because we have Caleb and he can think about those things. The system does not really have that current ability. We're on one platform. We're not like hotels where we're all over the place. So getting the technology industry to actually care enough about the recreation industry to help us leverage those things is going to be a game changer for everyone. And when you get into this whole primitive conversation, and Caleb could geek out with you all day long, but when we look at our capacity and where we're actually at capacity all the time, it's not primitive. It's RV and cabins and yurts. And so I think a lot of times people do these surveys, and rightly so, they don't need to know whether it's a city park, a county park, a national park, a U.S. Forest Service, or a state park. They just know they go camping at a location and their tax dollars pay for that. So I'm not sure that the data aligns with a primitive conversation where we're seeing the need is cabins and yurts and year-round capacity. Those are at like 77 to 80 some odd % capacity year-round. So primitive way lower.
Stu, did you have a
Yeah,
comment?
thank you. Yeah, good point. City parks offer camping too. Just
They
kidding.
do.
Get my dig.
Almost every.
Dynamically priced, yeah. Sure. So thanks for all your work on this. A couple of things that in, my experience we've done is, giving people the opportunity to pay what it actually costs. Have you thought about or talked about, messaging that to camp here, it actually costs $100, but we're going to charge you 40. So here's the box, check if you want to pay the $100, right? So it sounds silly, but I've seen this work. And hey, you guys picking on me down there?
No, we've
We're
got
like,
some good
we're like,
ideas.
yes, keep going, man.
Okay, so
Can you write camping?
So I've seen this work in the nonprofit world actually, and it's maybe a little more complicated in this discussion because it's state government and people have, different expectations. And I think just messaging the fact that we're not funded by the general fund is one thing, but also to promote the fact that it's expensive to offer water and sewer and electric services to campsites, right? If we have to pay fees to get rid of that wastewater, it just doesn't magically go away, right? So I think messaging that and giving people an opportunity to contribute to those costs, maybe no wastewater, that's not super sexy, but maybe some of those other opportunities with park operations, your favorite ranger costs money, right? So how can you help pay for your favorite ranger to be here? So I just wanted to messaging's huge, and giving people the opportunity to give back or to contribute, I think is important. And then also, since people aren't a huge fan, Caleb, as you said, of maybe permanent fixtures, there was a concert venue at Fort Stevens that was happening or happened. I think sponsorships, corporate sponsorships for temporary events are huge. In the city parks world, we generated thousands of millions of dollars in the state for local concert series, right? Even a little old LeGrand where I work, we generate thousands of dollars in sponsorship for our concerts in the park. And it's just free money, right? And it's temporary because this concert series is sponsored by this and it goes away. So there's no sign, there's no permanent fixture, there's no brick and mortar. So those are just two suggestions or opportunities that I think are huge opportunities for this organization. And especially with the fact that people now know there's a budget shortfall. You've all done a great job of spreading the word. Look, this is happening. I think now's the time to pounce on some of those. How can I help opportunities?
It's a great suggestion. We have been working on a campaign of awareness of what it takes to run a state park and trying to do a series over the next year of what does it really take to operate a state park? We hear a lot of times, well, nature should be free, but this is an engineered nature, and really digging down into what do rangers do? What is all the underground, the water, the sewer, we run small cities. The stat that we love to share that I don't think we shared when we were at Fort Stevens is it takes a semi-truckload of toilet paper for Fort Stevens. So we have been trying to share a little bit more of that data, but I love the idea of telling people how much their campsite costs per night.
But most
So,
importantly, giving them an opportunity to give back.
yeah, it-
Contribute towards.
we do have a donation page, but enhancing our donation page would be wonderful. And we are looking at sponsorships. We do have a sponsorship policy in the works. So more to come on sponsorships. We have a concession. I mean, I think Joe touched on a little bit. We do have looking at concessions. So we have have reassigned a staff person to beef up our concessions program and then look at the different concession opportunities, commercial, special use opportunities, and then sponsorship and the co-branding merchandise marketing opportunities.
I think it's interesting. The data is interesting. People don't want to look like you're selling out, but it's kind of like you have to sell out in a way.
A lot of times they don't know that we already do. I
Right.
mean, we have a private
Sure.
restaurant at Silver Falls. We have concessions that are running hotels. So they like what we have, and we already have some of those things.
Well, thank you. This is really hard work. I think, and I've brought this up to Lisa, but the education component is really important as we go into the fee increase. I don't think, like you mentioned, it's a park. People don't know where the money comes from to pay for it. They think it's their tax dollars. And so the more signage and information when they do go to pay those day fees about, where the money actually comes from and what it costs, I think may help soften the blow, but it's going to be, we're going to continue to hear it, and it's hard. We know that. And we appreciate all the work that you guys are putting into this, getting creative, because it's a lot. And hopefully we can all come up with some good solutions in the end.
And I just pass on to the frontline staff. This is hard, really hard on them to deal with angry customers every day, and just the appreciation for those people that that's gonna be a heavy lift. This is just hard. So
Yeah.
thank you.
We appreciate you saying that because it is our frontline staff who are having to learn the new systems and answer the questions. So we will definitely share that information, share that. Kudos to them. So now
Thank
we'll
you.
turn it to Caleb
Great
to talk
job, guys.
more
Thank
about
you.
rates.
Can I ask just one more question? For when people buy a permit, what information are we collecting? Is it only their license plate? And do we have, and if it is, do we have access to any other information about them?
So for the new system, it will be their license plate. For the current, if you're buying an annual permit,
Nothing.
we don't, people buy them as gifts for people. So we don't necessarily know who has an annual permit. A lot of times people buy multiple of them and then give them out as gifts or things like that. So we don't know who has annual permits.
And your
We don't
parking
really have-
permit, like if you went to Silver Falls and got a day use, you just get it out of the machine and put it on your dash. We have no idea if you're in state, out of state, who you are, any data.
With the QR codes, we are doing a unique QR code at each park so that we can track how many are sold at each park and get a little bit more information, but it won't be significant because we also want it to be really fast so that it's not a burden to
Yeah,
do the
that
thing.
makes sense.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So our next topic is the 2025 rate review. So I'm glad we talked a little bit about rates to kind of get us primed and thinking about it. Now, I'm going to give a little background here on when we've done rate reviews in the past, what the purpose is, and a little bit about how we've exercised the flexible fee authority since were given that authority in 2017. And then talk a little bit about how we set up the rate review, the methodology behind it, the results, looking at so we're really trying to represent the market of camping rates for different site types. And then thinking about what is the middle of the market, because we typically orient our rates based upon where the middle of the market is. And then we'll have some points for discussion. And of course, throughout this presentation, feel free to ask questions at any point. So historically, the agency has set camping rates slightly below the middle of the market with these joint goals of being both affordable, but also covering a substantial portion of operational costs. That's the goal of the rates, right? They want to be affordable, but still cover the cost of operating a campground. And we periodically will do a rate review to assess the market conditions to sort of see, all right, do we still sit where we think we sit? Do we need to assess where we are? Has the market changed much? And typically the goal is to establish, and nowadays we're doing rate ranges, not just simply the rate levels, that balance affordability with long-term financial stability. And so the history here, going back just to 2017, that's when the agency was granted flexible fee authority. And it was first exercised with a pilot project in 2019, a small rate increase at a few parks in the summer of 2019. Then from 2020 to 2025, we basically just brought in this summer seasonal adjustment to include more parks. We haven't really changed too much on the actual levels that the rates go up in the summer. Until 2025, we did slightly change that. But it's slowly added in new site types, new parks, and expanded the season a little bit to include May and September as part of the busy season. Now, some other big changes in 2022, we started the non-resident surcharge for RV sites. So non-residents paying 25% more than Oregon residents. And then just this past July, that was expanded to all campsites. And then for 2026, we have our rates for a number of campsites or site types are going to be moving to the top of the currently approved ranges. So on that note, these rate increases will be taking place or taking effect for stays beginning May 1st, 2026. And the first part is that at select parks, so it's not every park, but at select parks, the RV and tent site rates are going to move to the top of the current ranges. When we talked kind of about dynamic pricing, in our case, it's kind of like a variable price. So these rates are going to go to the top of their current range in the peak season, as well as in the off-season weekends. So you can see here, full hookup sites will be $52 plus lodging tax. Electrical sites will be $49 plus lodging tax. And tent sites will be $29 plus lodging tax. Again, this is at select parks. And you can see here, it's not every day of the year. But for cabins and yurts, because of the popularity of these sites, as well as the fact that they do require a bit more maintenance, cleaning and so forth, as you know, for turnaround with guests, at every park for all year, these rates will go to the top of the currently approved ranges. So rustic cabins, that's $81. Rustic yurts are $72. And then deluxe cabins and yurts are $129.
Can you remind us the difference between a rustic cabin and a deluxe cabin, the amenities that are offered?
The big difference is that the deluxe units have bathrooms in them. And so that's going to be the big distinguishing factor.
Thank you.
So the reason we're doing this rate review is because if we're going to the top of the ranges, then we need to reassess what our ranges are so that we continue to have the flexibility. So that's kind of where we're starting now, is to begin thinking about, how we want to approach and determine new rate ranges. So how do we review rates and how do we kind of get a feel for what the market is? And the way we do that is we find camping rates from various publicly and privately managed campgrounds from around the state, and we compare them to OPRD rates. And again, we're trying to represent the market that is relevant to OPRD campers. And again, we're really trying to represent what a camper would experience. So we're looking for parks across the state. We're trying to represent, anything from small campgrounds to big campgrounds, and comparing them to nearby Oregon state parks. And because site types are not always perfectly comparable between different campgrounds, we use the OPRD site type classifications to, as best as we can, fit those different options into comparable site comparisons. Now, in this review, we have rates from 13 privately managed campgrounds. So these options range from, some of them are one-stop places where you have all these possible activities to do, all the way down to kind of places where you can park your RV and then go off-site to find local nearby outdoor areas. We also have we have rates from 14 publicly managed campgrounds. So these come from bordering state parks in Washington and Idaho, the U.S. Forest Service. So these are U.S. Forest Service campgrounds in Oregon, county parks and city parks in Oregon. And then we have rates from 13 Oregon state parks. And the reason we bring in multiple Oregon state parks here are because lodging taxes do vary across the state, which from the customer perspective can have a dramatic effect on what the rates look like. So we bring in some different options from around the state to sort of see how, the customer would experience, this search for a campsite. And what we compare is the cost of one night of camping, including the lodging tax. So this base rate of just what does it cost to book one night? We're not including any reservation fees or anything, just simply booking the campsite, paying the lodging taxes. And to get a feel for OPRD rates and where we sit in the market, we're using next summer's rates. So we're using the higher rates from next summer to see where those rates would sit within the current market. And we're using the resident rates. So again, we have resident, non-resident, and in this case, we're putting the resident rate as our market rate. And I do have at the very end here, because we are kind of considering and wanting to be aware of all fees, I do have some fees related to dump station fees to kind of get a feel for what other campgrounds are charging. All right, so I'm going to kind of walk through the findings from each site type. And I apologize that these tables are hard to read. It's difficult to present, all these numbers on a slide. So what I've done is I've highlighted the Oregon State Park. So you can kind of, and these options are ranked from most expensive to least expensive. So by looking at the green highlight, you can kind of see where OPRD falls within the market in terms of the ranking from highest to lowest. And so for full hookup sites, this review includes 34 different rates or different camping options. And the least expensive is $35, ranging all the way up to $168 for one night of camping as the most expensive. Now, go
Where's
ahead.
that at?
Wow.
That is at a campground called Pacific Shores Motor Coach Resort on the coast. And the middle rate, the median, is $57. So you can kind of see that on that high end there, those rates over 100 are a bit on the kind of outlier. So the median being 57, Fort Stevens is the most expensive Oregon State Park at $60. And so you can kind of see there, if you were to look right at the middle of that chart, most of OPRD rates go lower, right? So in this case, for full hookup, the 2026 rates would sit at the middle or lower middle of the market. If we were to incorporate, though, the non-resident surcharge, a good example is to just look at Fort Stevens. That would go from $60 up to $74 per night, which is going to move it up, I believe, about 4 slots up to kind of the higher middle end of the market, but still kind of in that middle grouping. And it would, likewise, it would shift all of the OPRD rates up just a bit there.
Where's the KOA across the street from Fort Stevens? Where's that on that list?
It is actually number 2. You can't see it because of the
126?
Zoom
It's
thing there. It's at
120?
$126 per night.
Across the street.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then you pay for your fire ring, picnic table, your other, or is that fully
In this case, it included,
everything?
yeah, that
Okay.
that included the yeah.
including dumping at Fort Stevens.
Including dumping?
Yeah.
No, no, because
They don't-
you dump on
Yeah.
our.
Oh,
have
they
to
dumping
dump
it
at
at
our
park, yeah.
Well, if it's a full hookup, I guess you're.
Dumping
it.
They advertise it, free dumping.
Yeah, so that's a good example is that KOA is currently twice the price of what Fort Stevens will be next summer.
And they camp there, but they come to us.
Right.
Yep.
Mm.
So moving to electrical sites, so these have just the 2 hookups. There's 20 camping options. Now, I do point out in this that a lot of private campgrounds around the state actually just have full hookups. So this market for this specific site type is actually a little bit smaller of a market than the full hookup. So as we get into the actual rate setting, I think we may need to kind of combine the two RV site types. But in this case, we have 20 camping options ranging from the cheapest at $30 up to the most expensive at $84 a night. The middle rate is $51 per night. The most expensive OPRD example is Fort Stevens at $56 per night. And you can see in this case, again, I think partly because the market is just smaller, the OPRD rates sit in the upper middle portion. And with the non-resident surcharge, it would move Fort Stevens from $56 to $70. But interestingly enough, it actually only moves it up 1 slot in this ranking. So, you can see, of course, that all the other OPRD rates would shift up with the non-resident surcharge. But like I said, I think in some cases with the electrical, we may need to consider sort of the RV site market collectively rather than breaking it out because other campgrounds just typically have full hookups.
And then additionally in our fees, your day use is included. So if you were camping at Fort Stevens, you could go up and down the coast at any other location where we would charge, and that gets you into any of those sites.
Well, Chair Hill just showed me a picture of a pool at the KOA site, but I'm wondering if it costs so much more, why would, what are they offering that we don't offer? If they're going to recreate at the state park, dump at the state park,
It's
and then they also have an opportunity to, like what you just mentioned right now, utilize other services.
Well, they're there because we're full.
Oh.
I mean, we're at over 80%.
Oh,
We're
okay.
cheaper, right? So, and you
Yeah.
can't get in. So,
Oh.
so you're willing to pay that much more to have access to state parks.
Okay.
It's kind of
Coast.
illustrative of the demand of what
Right,
people
yeah.
are willing to pay.
Mhm.
Because yeah, in many cases, we're not looking at, a lot of these campgrounds are where people stay and the destination is off-site of the campground.
So a good, for example, Willow Lake, when we were over there in July, anybody been there?
Yeah.
Okay, and so where the little
Mhm,
go-karts are,
mhm.
that behind there is it's a campground. It was $50 for a tent site. You're in a parking lot and the go-karts go till 10 o'clock at night. But again, the demand is so high to be there and we don't have enough capacity that businesses are actually thriving
Mhm.
and fully recovering their operating costs.
Yeah.
Speaking of tent sites, our next market here is the market for tent sites. And we have 31 options here, with the least expensive being $20 a night, going all the way up to $86 a night.
80.
And so the most expensive OPRD option is Fort Stevens at 33. And to use our example again, so Fort Stevens will next summer be $33, and the Astoria KOA nearby is $74 a night for the tent site. And the middle rate in this market is $32. So you can see here again, OPRD is sitting right at the middle and then lower. So I call it the lower middle of the market. If we were to incorporate the non-resident surcharge, that would move Fort Stevens, for instance, from 33 up to $42, which moves it up, I think, 5 slots or so, keeping it in that kind of middle cluster of rates, but a little bit on the higher end. But as you can see too, the private campgrounds have, I think it's the most expensive 8 or so options here. Now, looking at.
ODOT has
question.
thousands of tent sites along the way. Were those factored in of cost too?
No.
No. They're free, I heard.
So when we get into the cabins and yurts discussion, it gets a little trickier because these are harder. The amenities for these sites can vary a lot within the market. In our review, we're grouping them based on that distinction of whether they have a bathroom in the unit or not. So rustic units do not have a bathroom in the unit. Deluxe units do. But even within the rustic category and the deluxe category, there's a lot of variation. So it can be a little harder to compare. But here, looking at the rustic cabins and yurts, we've got 26 options, and the rates range anywhere from $50 all the way up to $208 per night. The middle rate is $88. You can see LL Stubbs Stewart is the most expensive in the review for OPRD at $90 per night. And you can see again with that highlighting that the OPRD rates sit right at the middle and below. If we were to bring in the non-resident surcharge, the Stubbs Stewart rate goes from 90 up to 112, but within the market, it only moves up, I think, 3 or 4 spots. So we're still pretty much kind of clustering into the middle there with the non-resident surcharge on cabins and yurts. And then the deluxe, there's just a lot less options in this market. There's actually, I couldn't find any other public examples. So these are all privately managed campgrounds. And there's 13 options here ranging from $81 a night all the way up to, at the Astoria KOA, $327 per night for a deluxe cabin. And the middle rate is $167. And you can see here pretty clearly that OPRD rates are on the lower end, with Fort Stevens the highest at $148 per night. And even if you brought the non-resident surcharge in, Fort Stevens would go to $185 a night for the deluxe cabin, which moves it up, looks like three slots to pretty much to the middle of the market. Now, just to give us an idea, because there's talk and discussion about considering a dump station fee. So I brought in some dump station fees from different public and private campgrounds. And here we've got 8 options. It's actually pretty hard to find dump station fees online, I won't lie. But these range from $5 up to $17. And the most expensive is a private campground, but we do see a public campground here in Lynn County in Oregon at $15 per use. So, we kind of see anywhere from that 5 to 15 at public options. And one of the things to note about these, they can really vary in between. Some places don't charge their campers to use it. Some places are open to anybody to use them. Some places do charge their campers to use them. So it can vary how these fees are implemented. Now, I know we've already had a little bit of questions and discussion, but I will pause here to kind of see if anything sticks out as we look at these ranges, and if anything goes against or aligns with your expectations with OPRD. And I do want to point out and stress again that we're looking at OPRD's rates for next summer compared to the current market. So most of our things are skewing higher than what we actually are charging right now in 2025.
And we really wanted to contrast the private side of it. We've always looked at like county, other states, and it's like, that's not really comparative. The comparative is like these campgrounds are in destinations to come to us. So we really wanted you to see like what it looks like across Oregon.
Which was
Go
a
ahead,
good
Stu.
segue to what I was gonna say, is in our car ride and our tour, we talked about a culture shift. Because people, so I think OPRD staff, along with the citizenry, think that this is subsidized in a way. So for me, we should be probably comparing ourselves to private. If we're gonna sustain ourselves, then we need to be in that middle upper, not the middle lower. That was my takeaway. There should be no excuse to be in the middle lower anymore. Like, we can't afford that. So the messaging has to go with that. The culture shift has to come with that, but now's the time. So that just kind of back to that. Well, there's $14 million. How else are we going to do that? RV dump stations are a no-brainer to me. You pay that everywhere, at a gas station, maybe not on a rest area along the ODOT highways, but everywhere you're paying for those. So that's just a no-brainer to me. So that's my take, is the culture shift and moving to that more private comparison, upper middle, would be where I would like to see us go.
On top of that, as we're looking towards these possible charging these fees, would this be only to the park users, or would this be to the general public?
Say more.
For dump stations.
For the dump stations, yeah. Because like you pointed out there, Lynn County, that River Bend, and that's $15, and I camp there quite a bit, I know that. But they do not let anybody dump there unless they're staying there. So moving forward with the state parks, if we're moving this way, are we thinking that it's going to be open, or just for the park users?
It would be open because currently people come and do it for free now. So we would leave it open. I think the philosophy that we're thinking currently, and we could be shifted on this, is that everyone would pay, only because the technology we're looking at would require, I think it would be more challenging for us to try to implement ways for people to have a code to not pay. And so I think it's just easier. And we could talk about, if you camp, it's $5. If you don't, it's 10. I mean, a lot of that I think would be honor system, but those pieces we literally just dumped this on Joe and everybody else with the parking stuff. We're like, well, while we're at it, can we do QR codes and do something with the dump stations? And we're ready.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I do see potential for increasing our fees, because it looks like the other public and private groups charge more for their various sites. At the same time, we are not private, we are public, and it's just really challenging to balance the financial need and ensuring that these places are still accessible to people, of all different income ranges. Because when you go out and you go camping, if all that's available in the market is like the KOA at $168 a night, that becomes really unaffordable. So I'm glad to see that we're below that. Though I do see that, there are people who are willing to pay, but I also I want to make sure that we are accessible to all Oregonians.
And I also I agree. The accessibility piece is really important. I think as a state public agency, the other piece, I mean, we've talked about dynamic pricing. And so I think that could really serve in ensuring that once we get that in place, that there are opportunities to bring down those prices and maybe off seasons so that there's more accessibility for families that are local and, want to stay for a longer time, but can't afford, a $300 a week stay. And so hopefully we can figure that piece out as we move through this, but yeah, go ahead.
So I have a different view only because I've spent my life on hospitality and lodging. So I'm looking at this and going, oh, what a great rate, but balancing that the purpose is to be accessible to the public. A couple thoughts that come to me, and you may be doing this or may not be doing this. So I think about I see parallels to the Oregon lodging industry. For instance, the coastal prices pushing up. We see that. I mean, we see that in average daily rates for lodging partners are much higher in seasonality along the Oregon coast than they are inland. So that bakes through. I'm curious, when you've done this work, have you per unit or by unit have figured out what's your break-even cost? What's our cost per yurt? What's our cost per deluxe cabin? So in the lodging industry, I mean, we always know what the break-even is and what's layering on, so we're not losing money. The other thought that comes to me is there are some resources out there. You're probably looking at them. I'm assuming you are, but if you don't, it's a different industry. That particularly seasonal pricing, as we start talking about the seasonality that are available, purchased by Travel Oregon. So this is through CoStar, and we called STR reports, and they are Oregon provides them by county, and so you're actually seeing comparably what the hotel industry lodging is charging per month, per week, and so you're able to start saying, are we too much of a great deal? Are we right priced? I mean, as you're going through all that type of work, there's also resources available now through other research firms where you're able to buy scrape data to understand what the short-term rental markets are doing, and it's called AirDNA. So that if you're looking at Tillamook County, if you're looking at Jefferson County, if you're once again, are the rates? Are you feeling good about the rates that they're market? Understanding that I don't think the philosophy is that the park should be top market. I think they should be mid market, but is in this revenue type of thing, are we leaving money on the table? Should it be? And what's our break-even cost? So I mean, it's revenue management is a full-time job. So just some things that I see all the time.
Yeah. And oh, go ahead.
Well, the break even is a little unique, right? A hotel says, this is my asset, and
Yeah.
this is what they can do. We have miles and miles of trails. We have all kinds of preventative maintenance. We have historic assets. So the break even is really challenging. We have never been intended to fully recover costs because we're a public entity. But with lottery declining and no additional diverse revenue stream coming in, it makes it super challenging to even discuss a break even. Like, it would be insurmountable. Like, I think you would be shocked to realize what it would cost per visitor.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are more along the lines are.
The electricity, the water.
Electricity, water, staffing, upkeep, repair, you
Yeah.
know, versus, you know, it's not the entire park. It's that little bit that
Yep.
you know, I think a Stubbs Stewart and the units up there, they have cleaners. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
real cost there, right?
A lot of it we depend on hosts and volunteers. So
Yeah.
so here's a big eye opener, right? Because we're a public entity, we've always been required to be low. We're very nice about everything. Great, fantastic. We started looking last year with the new mindset of, okay, we're going to talk about how do we even break even. We have 3 parks out of 54 overnight campgrounds that actually make money or break even. We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
A lot of work to do. So we'll go out and we'll assess every park this year and start looking at it and start talking about with this procurement opportunity, where can we, like Detroit Lake is one of the greatest examples we use during our legislative hearings of, it's owned by US Forest Service. We are a concessionaire, so we actually pay them to manage their asset and we lose money. And I think if you would have ever given that manager the opportunity to break even or make a profit, if you unleashed Bob and said, oh my gosh, you could sell pizza on weekends and you could sell Beanie Babies, like, we could figure it out. It's just never been our DNA.
Yeah.
And at this point, it is very clear now through the pandemic and this last legislative session, nobody is coming to financially save us. So we've got to start thinking differently and keep in that middle, but at the same time, recognize the value of what we have to offer and making sure that we're getting closer to that. How do we recover? Because it is challenging to get to a place that we're going to fully recover costs with all the different amenities that we offer for free: interpretation, education, trails, historic assets, the natural, the scenic, the cultural. I mean, it's different than a hotel or a campground.
Yeah, right. I'm just curious, what's the census count for like cabins and yurts? I mean, do you
We
give
have 300.
like 500 cabins do we have, or?
We have 300 cabins
300?
and yurts combined, yeah.
And we rely mostly on hosts to clean them, which is why we stay at cabins. Because a couple folks were asking, like, could we do like bigger houses for more families could come together and do like Airbnb type? And it's like, yeah, but then you got to clean that. And our staff fully loaded are very expensive. So a host can do 6 cabins, 8, 6 to 8 cabins. And we literally are relying on volunteers to be able to help us do that.
So as you're going down the road, I mean, you may, and I don't want to take up everyone's time, but you may want to take the accommodations by type. Okay,
Mhm.
so say we have 300 units that are cabins. We have 200 units that are yurts. We have 500 units that are camping spots. And think of each of those as a business unit, as you would think of as, okay, if you have 300 cabins, that's essentially one lodging property. So overall, what's the average cost? And so how does that unit perform versus like looking at everything together? I think you should start looking at it by business unit or business type. It's a new way of thinking about it, but then I think the numbers might tell you something differently. It's like,
Yeah.
like you're right. Are you losing money? Are you making money? Are we breaking even?
Yeah.
And is breaking even our mission, or
Right.
is making money our mission too?
And I actually have a slide.
But he's got
Yeah.
great data on that one.
Coming up.
Oh, this is a little bit like overlap with the reimagine conversation, but I think it's relevant to the pricing of, like, for example, the deluxe cabins. But I'm wondering if, you've considered like packages. Many hotels will offer packages, so you pay a higher price, but then you get all of these other things as well, concierge service to like tour the park. I mean, I don't know. You get a Beanie Baby and a bottle of wine on your head. But yeah, but have you thought about like, I don't know if anybody else does that with.
So
cabins.
currently they don't, because we don't have a technology partner that has that functionality.
Okay.
So we're hoping in 26
Yeah.
that we will have at least 2 partners in the technology world that can offer those types of experiential opportunities, because
Mhm.
that's been our biggest challenge, is that we have great ideas and ways that we could collaborate. Even like if you did Fort Stevens and you wanted to buy dinner from a local restaurant, or you want to get your fishing license at the same time, that collaboration and that technology is not there yet.
Yeah, I guess that's a dynamic pricing,
Yeah.
probably all the same technology.
Yes.
All right, so we will have a little bit more discussion here, and I think kind of touching, probably circling back on some of these ideas as well. But just to kind of, so I want to summarize and then talk a little bit more about defining the middle of the market and then having a few more kind of ideas to think about as we plan to set new rate ranges. So from the review, we're seeing that our resident rates tend to settle into the middle or lower end of the market. Our non-resident surcharges move them up a little bit higher in the distribution, often into the upper middle. Now, when we look across the market, we see private campgrounds typically have the highest rates. Now, public campgrounds tend to have the least expensive rates, but we still see public campgrounds that are more expensive than OPRD. So OPRD even sits within a range of, there are some public campgrounds less expensive, some public campgrounds more expensive than OPRD. And again, we're looking at OPRD's higher 2026 rates compared to the 2025 market. So we've seen historically the market rates also go up. So it's very likely that the market itself will shift up a bit by next summer anyway. And we'll kind of even see OPRD rates shift a little bit lower in the market. Now, talking a bit specifically about OPRD's market position and maybe some kind of guiding ideas on setting those future rate ranges, because we want to set rate ranges that give us the flexibility to do dynamic pricing, to look at break-even points. And so, if we lock ourselves into rate ranges that are either too small or not suitable, it's going to mean we're going to have to just keep getting new rate ranges every year or two. So, and we don't want to do that. We want a bit more long-term flexibility. So I'm going to kind of walk through quickly here what the middle of the market rates might look like. And I'd ask that you think about, and we've talked about it already a little bit, but kind of thinking, where should OPRD sit within the market, risks and opportunities of moving within that distribution. And then when we think about maybe our affordability, are there specific site types that should remain on the lower end? Are there certain amenities that should justify higher rates? And then on the note of, costs, should we be basing rates looking sort of internally at the cost of operation? So defining the middle of the market, what I did was I took the middle 50%, right? So we have 25% on the high end, 25% on the low end, and then we have 50% in the middle. And I took lodging taxes out. That way we can say, okay, OPRD rates are this number. We set our rates pre-lodging tax, so we can kind of look at the competitors in that middle market range pre-lodging tax, that we're all on the same level. And when we go into the RV sites, and I apologize if I'm moving quickly here. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so just ask me a question or anything if I go quickly here. But looking at these two together, we see the full hookup rate of $52 for next summer. The middle market is $49 to $77. So again, we're on that lower end of the middle. For electrical, our rate is going to be $49. The middle market is $44 to $51. So we're a little bit higher. It's a smaller range because, again, it's less options out there. But part of the reason, or something to think about here with these sites are OPRD, we've traditionally priced these very close. So there's one hookup difference between the two sites, and we've traditionally priced them about $2 difference per night. It's going to be $3 difference per night. But so that's something to think about when we talk about amenities. Should these be priced further apart? Should they be, should we continue with the practice of pricing them pretty closely? Looking at tent sites, we've got OPRD rates going to $29, the middle market range $27 to $44. So again, on the lower end of the middle market, and we've got both private and public options being more expensive, less expensive, but these have been one of the site types that we've traditionally been slower to increase rates on with respect to, or with affordability in mind. And then lastly, cabins and yurts. The rustic units are going to be 72 to 81. The middle market is 71 to 111. So again, we're on the lower end of the middle. For deluxe cabins and yurts, it's going to be 129 at OPRD properties compared to 133 to 233 for the middle of the market. So again, it's not even in the middle market range, it's below it. But keeping in mind the variation in amenities for these sites when we compare our units to other units. Some have more amenities, some have less. So on the topic of the cost to operate a campsite, so the rate review, of course, is looking outward. We're looking at the market and what other folks are charging, but we're not necessarily assessing what we're doing internally. And so there is some early work trying to tease out these metrics and understanding, like we were just talking about. So we do know, and we're trying to put, like I said, metrics on it, that the variable costs to operate each site type differ. If we're just looking at the direct costs, right? People using utilities on the site, the staff time it takes to check people in, to turn over the site, the supplies. Deluxe cabins and yurts are most expensive, as we talked about, the cleaning associated with those sites, followed by the rustic units, RV sites, and tent sites. But when we look, that's the cost side, but when we look over at the revenue side, that's also going to be affected by the nightly rate and are people actually staying there? Because if they're staying there, then they're paying. So it's not as simple as these sites are cheapest, therefore they're going to be more profitable. These sites are, more expensive to operate. Now, Director Sumption brought up a great point, though, is that these are the direct costs associated, but it's difficult to assign the costs of the wear and tear on the restrooms, the maintenance on the restrooms to a specific campsite, the trail usage, needing park rangers and park staff to help people. It's difficult to associate all of the other amenities and services that people are using at the parks with specific site types. So this is in the kind of the early stages of this analysis. And of course, the next steps, or I guess there's one aspect here of looking at the current inventory, what we currently have, and then there's another aspect of looking at adding new inventory, because that's going to incorporate some upfront fixed costs. And then that's going to be another part of the analysis, is understanding how long does it take to, recover the fixed costs associated with constructing new site types as well. So bringing us back to our discussion, I'm just going to kind of open up the floor to see if there's any other thoughts on any of these topics that we've been going through.
And Caleb, you didn't cover it because we're so focused on campgrounds here, and there's 53, I think, now that we've transferred folks out. But can you just share a little bit about the other 200 plus properties that don't generally have any other?
Yeah, exactly. We have many parks that are free to the public, and again, those parks are providing services. There's tons of infrastructure on those parks. There's tons of outdoor recreation infrastructure, and the wear and tear of visitors. I mean, we host 53 million day visitors a year, and I think around 40 million of those visits happen at parks that have no fees associated with them. So, again, those costs really being spread out across a wide base is a big part of, what we're looking at.
Go ahead, Commissioner Criven.
So I will ask it. I think we have to be realistic about, there's only so much money the state parks has, and you're spreading that across a large number of parks. At some point, the question has to be, would the state parks consider closing some parks or divesting themselves of parks, turning them over to local control, whatever the options are? Is there a process for doing that? Is that even an option?
Yeah, so you guys adopted the disposition policy here just a couple meetings ago. We have been since 2007, I think, is when we were legislatively directed to coordinate with our local partners. And we have transferred multiple properties over to local parks and one tribe. We do have the ability to now dispose of certain properties. So we have properties that are non-developed that were part of when we were ODOT, right? Like we have some prime Central Oregon spots that we've said, even guys said today, well, maybe we could start thinking about disposing of some of those properties. I think we want to pause and think about long game, what we would want to do on those properties. That might be a place that we could have a public-private partnership and find a way to, generate 99-year leases or some other something that might make sense for the organization long term, because until somebody is going to lobby and find another financial instrument for the organization to thrive, we're going to have to think creatively. So yes, we have that ability. If there's any, we currently with counties, cities, special districts, we're like, if you think you can manage it better, you now have 13% more of those lottery funds available to you that we will never be able to have access to. We would love for our partners to step up and take over those properties. And we've done it successfully in multiple locations. A lot of times they're like, they don't have the ability to maintain them long game. The counties are saying the same thing to us. You guys need to go out front. We need to be able to follow you. If you guys don't do this, we're not going, we're all in the same spot.
Right.
And so it really is paving the way for everyone else. So,
Right.
yeah.
And I've been there as a county commissioner talking about closing parks. It's never an easy topic and never a popular topic. But
No.
I mean, at some point, we have to at least have the public be aware that that's a possibility if we can't solve this funding gap.
And as we, over this next year, as we go through and we do the assessment in each one of our properties to look at what does it look like, there may be properties we just divest in, or that we say we're going to divest in the facilities and the infrastructure that's on those properties. We don't need to replace it with $1 million restroom. A CXT ball toilet will be just as helpful. Serves the purpose, not as sexy. Those kind of things where our standards have been really high. And I think that is it is going to shift this next year.
Thank you.
And as I think through the the rates for camping too, I think of that in the back of my head of maybe we look at additional amenities to really offset the costs of particularly like tent camping and primitive camping, where, you know, we hold some of the most beautiful places in Oregon, and the only way to access it is through our state park. And we want people to use these parks, and that's why we're here. And so if we can keep our rates low on something like a tent site or a primitive camping site and offset it through additional, whatever it is, coffee in the park or whatever, I would really love to see more of that. It's really important to me that we do have lower costs for some of those very primitive sites so that it is still accessible to the community and the public, and people still feel like they are welcome in the state park.
I went camping in Canada, and one of the things that was offered was for people who are coming from out of town, if they rented a cabin, you could also rent your sheets and your cooking set, and it was actually really expensive, but we had no other choice, and I think that people who are coming in for those kinds of experiences from out of state might be willing to pay a little bit more because they're actually going on a vacation, right? And so, in terms of offering other types of amenities, that might be an opportunity that allows us to keep other types of accommodations like tent sites more affordable.
I'll just agree with the primitive site discussion. I think the opportunity to go middle high and the 50 amp sites, for example, if you have a motorhome that requires 50 amps, you probably don't have an issue with accessibility. I mean, maybe you do, but I totally agree with that sentiment. Keeping them accessible for the primitive sites for sure.
Yeah, my thought is, I think it's really merits a staff or commission discussion about aligning mission. Because when money comes into play and you start thinking about achieving the financials, that's one thing, but there's also what's the overall mission of the parks, and making sure that we're clear on the message and that we're messaging to the professional staff, like, is it all about making money or is it all about being affordable? So I think it's a fine line. My only thought I keep coming back to is when I think about the RV sites and I think about the improved camping areas, just particularly the really popular ones, are we so mid-market that and we're getting in the campsites are getting filled up, because, hey, you know, it's across the street is a professionally run place that costs more, but let's go here. So are we just leaving recouped dollars on the table for when it's really, really busy, where it would be appropriate and still mission affordable for people to be coming here? You know, Fort Stevens is filling up because it's cheaper than KOA, and it's filled up, and then they push over to KOA as an example. It's kind of like stuff I heard today. So it's not easy, yeah. But I really think some of the really looking at the county markets to see, you know, is the pricing right?
Well, I think that's part of the next step is setting the ranges. So we have the flexibility, because right now we just went to the top of the ranges and that's putting us at the middle, right, and the lower end.
So low.
And so having ranges that create the flexibility is important.
And it hasn't even been a decade that we don't have to go ask the legislature to take our prices up. I just want to point that out, because that was our reality up until 2017. And that was a huge win when that happened. And they were like, this is never going to work. And thank goodness you have that authority.
I think just back to mission, like Dave talked about, I think it's really important because the mission comes from the legislature in a way, because if they're not going to support our budget, or they're not going to supply resources, then we're forced to sort of make those decisions based on, if their mission is accessibility, they need to fund that in a way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if our mission is that, then they're going to have to supplement that.
Or are we offering amenities that are too expensive to maintain? And, you know, when
Do
the
we
general
have-
public just wants basic camping
Yeah,
sites.
do that.
I mean, that's the other piece. It's a balance for each of these locations. So,
Yep.
you know, I think it's a mix, to be honest, at every campground. And some people want a luxury experience and some people just want to go camping in a field. So, yeah, it's a hard thing to balance.
And one of the things that we were at our national conference last week, and we had the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Interior there focusing in on what National Park Service is doing, and they're having the exact same conversation, right? And so it doesn't matter whether you're a city, a county, a special district, state, federal, it's everyone's having the same dialogue, and there's never been really good coordination amongst us to say, okay, so if this is full, what other resources are around? And we've tried to do this with the county, even in Oregon forever, to say, like, there just should be a map that you can go to and say, if I can't get here, where can I go? Because I do think that there are a lot of dispersed camping opportunities that are still there that people don't even know exist. The U.S. Forest Service and BLM have a ton of those opportunities. And so when I hear it, state lands, so there's an opportunity for us to message and market that and collaborate a little bit differently. So I think the more we get our feet under us, I think we can start leading some of those dialogues to say, this is what state parks doesn't generally offer primitive. That's never been our game. And so I think even seeing some of that show up in the survey is like, what are they thinking when they're answering the survey? Are they thinking about a U.S. service experience or a state park experience? And I think delineating what that really means be super important here over the next year, and then partnering with these folks that have other experiences. Yep. Security, bathrooms.
1000%.
And typically when you do a big survey, people across the population, you see more support for tent sites and like primitive camping, because most people don't own an RV. And so you see support for it, but our RV sites are always higher occupancy rate than our tent sites, because people who own RVs are very dedicated campers. They make up a smaller portion of the general population, but they're very dedicated with
Even in
the
the
camping
rain.
population. So we also see that.
Great discussion, you guys.
Great
You guys,
questions. Yeah.
you guys are here at probably our most exciting and challenging time at the same. So I just appreciate the dialogue and the questions. Keep them coming, because we're learning as we go, and we still have a lot to do in front of us. But just really appreciate the support to get to where we are, because it's hard sometimes to reflect back and think of where we were and where we are and what's still yet in front of us.
Just for clarification, so you shared with us the price for next summer, right?
Yep.
And when is our next opportunity to increase our prices?
So we put those rates for next summer into the reservation system. We typically have to put, so if things go into effect May 1st, that means that we have to get those rates in the reservation system 6 months plus 2 weeks before that, plus usually another month for obviously just, technical reasons. So we need to be always thinking far ahead. So we're always almost like a year ahead is really the way to think about it. So that's why we're getting the conversation going now to expand our rate ranges so next summer's rates are set, but then by expanding the rate ranges would give us the ability to then make changes for really the following year.
So does that involve opening rulemaking again? or
No,
what
it would
kinds
come
of
back to you. You guys have the authority to set our fee ranges.
New ranges?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So for many of the fees that we're putting into place now, we are at the top of our rate ranges. So that will take rulemaking in
Oh,
order to
there'll be an-
expand the rate ranges. So we will be coming back to you in November to look at some additional capacity in rate ranges and some changes to our rules around cancellations and some other fee change things within the rate division. And just to open them in November so that we have that capacity for next year, not an immediate fee increase, but some capacity and some flexibility in there.
For 27.
Yes.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
Any other questions or comments on this? I think that ends our
Work session.
work session. And we do not have dinner until 5:30.
5:30
So we have a little bit of
to
time.
explore Astoria.
Explore, grab a beer at one of